Dude, come on, man. I mean, just when I thought Rostermania might have been hitting its stride a little bit, we were not ready for it, man. I mean, today we have some of the biggest news in years in COD. I mean, this is a long time since the last time we had news this big, and we have a ton to talk about today again. So, I mean, before we get to anything else and talking Rostermania and theorizing all these changes and all things going on, we got to talk about FormaL first, man. One of the GOATs of Call of Duty has stepped away. FormaL just announced today that he is stepping away from COD. We can probably switch over to the little Twitter scene here and look at that. So FormaL announced today that he is stepping away from COD. He put out a tweet longer talking about his time and that he's stepping away, basically going to be focusing on content and doing streaming and these types of things, at least for now. I mean, with Infinite coming out, I mean, maybe that could be an option, but like, bro, FormaL is one of the GOATs of all time. He's one of the best, 5 players in COD history, undoubtedly, and a foundational player in COD history, a guy that literally all time, I mean, he's a GOAT. He just is. And it really sucks seeing him leave the scene like this. I mean, I think he had a lot more in his tank, and he had a lot more wins, in the future for him if he decided he wanted to keep playing. But obviously, if he thought that maybe the passion wasn't there like it used to be anymore, and that was maybe holding him back a little bit to grind like they used to, those are all different things. And so if this is where he wants to go, it just sucks for COD, man. I mean, we obviously wish FormaL the best, and wow, it's crazy, man. It's really mind-blowing. And I got, like, when I tweeted today, like, yo, I'm like actually mind-blown. Like, I legit was, because this was just not in the cards for me. I didn't see FormaL retiring. I thought he still had that fire, still had that energy, still had that grind in him. And it's just crazy that we're not going to see FormaL on the main stage next year. So, I mean, that was one of the many dominoes to fall today. And of course, this was after the news that broke Twitter earlier in the day with Envoy announcing that he was a restricted free agent. So where is this tweet? Somewhere in here. I'm not as organized as I should be. It's somewhere in here. There it is. All right. So basically he just announced unrestricted free agent for the 2022 season. And then he was replying to FormaL and all that here. So Envoy is now off OpTic Gaming as well. He took OpTic out of his bio. It's done. I mean, OpTic Envoy is no more. The prince is gone. So I mean, he's looking for a new kingdom, I guess. And so that's good. Obviously, what we talked about on the podcast, and I said this in the pinned comment on yesterday's video, because people were asking about OpTic a little bit more after their press conference. And, after their press conference yesterday, I thought, okay, maybe this team stays together based off of their conversations and how they talked about the squad. But then Envoy announces he's a free agent. A day later, FormaL announces his retirement. And that was one thing that I wanted to mention from the press conference, was that FormaL did seem pretty low energy, and maybe that was part of it. There's all those different factors as well. So it's crazy, man. I mean, that is the first step of today's video, which could probably be, I mean, we could talk for hours today, just me and you talking through Rostermania rumors. So we'll do our best to sort through what these dominoes could look like. Because again, OpTic, at the end of the day, it's the reality of the COD scene right now. They're the top dog. And so what happens with OpTic affects every single roster in the CDL, because maybe like a guy like Octane, thought that he was in a good spot with his squad that he had, let's say was with LAT, and now OpTic opens up, and if OpTic is asking you to join their team, you're going to join their team. So those are all potential factors now that we got to talk about and talk through every single option with Rostermania. So there was a lot of other things that happened today. Tej just announced that he's a free agent, so now that is another factor as well, which I think we all kind of saw coming, with the potential of Tej being a free agent this year, which would make sense after LAT. So that makes a lot of sense. And overall, there's a bunch of different things going on. We had the second that FormaL announced his retirement, they had Zuma, had Krim on stream, and people were theorizing the brick patterns in the background. Like, is this Scump's house? And that was going down. And then we have a lot of other news too. So the other big thing here is that on the flank, Attach kept saying like, yo, this isn't the end of this. Like, there's something else. And so what would be the something else? I mean, that would be, I don't know what else could potentially blow someone's mind more than FormaL retiring and Envoy leaving OpTic. because now we have Dashy as a, is he gonna keep playing with Scump? Is there another option in the books? Did Scump truly Thanos snap and kick everybody off OpTic? I mean, that is possible as well. And you know, Bance tweeted me this offseason with this frustration pick. We had Insight tweeting. We had Yeez and Awakening tweeting. And from the changes I've been told, you know, some mind-blowing stuff here. Mac Melts was like, yo, we need to pray for me in this offseason. Skies is excited. We got Slack saying, yo, I'm mind blown. And this was all after the Envoy news. So if this is whether or not they were hearing the formal news or if they were hearing something else, but it sounded like a lot of the pros were caught off guard by FormaL retiring. So Neptune had the little Patrick Star thing going on here. And then Insight earlier today tweeted, life isn't fair. I mean, that's about as a down bad Rostermania tweet as you can have. When you pair that with the Bance tweet here, I mean, that's a lot going on there. And like the other thing was Standy last night tweeted, he tweeted this GIF. So Standy last night tweeted this GIF. Saint replied with the "you hate to see it" tweet. I replied with this. And then he deleted it, and he also tweeted a green heart, and he ended up deleting that one. So Standy's an interesting one, but today they were trolling on Twitter. So, you know, they tweeted, apparently him and Attach went to lunch. So they tweeted this, and then Attach tweeted this, going to miss you, bro. But then, you know, apparently some of the air was a little bit, you know, cleared here. And apparently he's going on vacation to Hawaii for a week, says Saint. So I don't know. I'm still under the impression that Minnesota is going to keep their roster, but Standy to OpTic is at least possible. So we now that we went through all the Twitter potential drama and things that are still potentially going to happen. Again, this like big thing that Attach said multiple times on the flank, like we still haven't heard this thing even after the FormaL situation. We still haven't heard it. People are gonna be mind blown. Like, I don't know, man. What would that even mean is the big question. So now we have a lot of questions to fill here, and we got to start with OpTic at the top. So let's switch over to our Rostermania big board here, because that's everything that matters is the Rostermania big board. This is where we left off after yesterday, and we have a lot to change now. So, man, dude, FormaL is retired. I'm actually so mind blown. I can't believe it. So FormaL's retired, man. So we'll put him in the corner. So now Envoy's gone, all right? And this is going to create absolute chaos. Oh, the other thing we heard was that Octane confirmed on the flank that he had heard Kleenex's name thrown around as a potential option. So you pair that with Insight's mind blown, you know, down bad tweets and Bance's frustrations, that creates for a real possible situation here. So I think Kleenex is a possibility. So the question is for OpTic, is Dashy staying? At this point, I would lean he is, but from Scump's perspective, I think it very much comes down to a lot of other factors. So what does Scump want is really what it comes down to, because I think the majority of the players in the CDL, if Scump's like, yo, I want you to come on to OpTic, they're going to say yes. There's very few players that would say no. Very, very few. So that would be the debate. So I guess it comes down to whether or not we think that Dashy will be the guy there. And for now, let's leave him on that page. Krim going to OpTic is a real possibility now. So let's bring all these guys down that we still think. We basically have to reset the page here. I also think that Florida is for sure going to make changes. And the only player that's guaranteed here at this point is Skies. So we're going to reset the big board here. All right. So we're resetting the big board with a lot of these big time pieces. Standy is an X factor. I'm going to leave him there for now. So we'll move Clay down here. Clay is an X factor. It's not confirmed that he's leaving New York yet. Hook is an X factor. So we got Shotzi and Illy. We got Scump and Dashy. I mean, we'll move him back down. We got Skies, and then we have Octane as a wild card still on the loose. So there is so many players who are still massive X factors. We'll bring Octane down. We'll bring Vivid down. It feels like Kenny's a lock to stay on LA Thieves. So He's really the only guy I'm down to lock in on this LAT squad. Besides that, Draza is still potentially could find a change. So right now, I mean, this is the most that Rostermania has ever been up in the air with so many good teams. I mean, for a franchise league like this, I mean, again, we have these other rosters here, but realistically at this point, the only 2 rosters that are intact, well, the only 3 would be FaZe, Ultra, and Rocker. But even at that point, I think Standy's still an X factor here, where if a team pays like bonkers money for him, then that could still be a play. And then Ultra, CleanX is a huge X factor. I think CleanX could legitimately change teams. And the question would be, where would that go? Is OpTic a real question mark? Because if you're Scump and you couldn't beat Ultra this whole season, you really struggled to beat him. I mean, you could not beat him in S&D especially. Wouldn't it be nice to break up that squad and bring CleanX onto your team? I mean, that would be nice. You can break up another great squad and you're improving your team in theory. So that could be a real possibility, man. The question is, are the Ultra willing to pay CleanX what the other teams are willing to pay? You know, because if OpTic's willing to pay insane cash, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for a guy like CleanX, will Ultra, which is owned by Splice, be willing to match that? Probably, but maybe not. I don't know. There's always that world, and not to mention the clout that you'll get from OpTic. I mean, again, that's always the X factor, is if you win a COD champs with OpTic, the clout that you'll have would be unmatched. And so that's always an X factor for brand building. So with all of those things in mind, where are we at? I still think that there's a mind-blowing thing happening, and Attach keeps saying it. I think that's going to be CleanX. I think he's talking about CleanX. I'm not sure what that would look like besides CleanX going to Dallas, or CleanX going to OpTic, or CleanX going to the Subliners. One of those 3 teams would make a ton of sense. Otherwise, CleanX to Thieves maybe, with a huge bag. That's possible. We know they're willing to drop the bag like that, so that could be insane. Man, there's literally infinite options at this point. And so let's see what feels most likely. I mean, I'll make sure to see what you guys have to say below about Crim going to OpTic. So before we even say anything else, this is where we're at with Rostermania right now. These are the locks. Well, we'll even move CleanX down. So, and I'll move Standy down. Well, honestly though, if Standy leaves, then the whole roster could fall apart. So at this point, I'm gonna leave Rocker and I'm gonna leave FaZe. I think CleanX is leaving. I think that's the big news that Attach would be talking about. Otherwise, like, what else would be the big news? Because I think most of the scene already thinks that Clay could leave, unless the big news is Clay heading to Empire. And in that case, that could be the big news that Attach is talking about. But like he thought that people were going to be mind blown. And I think in my head, the only absolutely mind blowing move would be Toronto breaking up, because let's be honest, they should not break up. I mean, if I'm Toronto, there's no chance I'm breaking up. I'm the only team that took FaZe anywhere close to the brink on the year regularly. I mean, Empire did it once, but Toronto's the only team that regularly took FaZe to the brink. And so if I'm Ultra, there's no chance I'm breaking up. Absolutely no chance. But if CleanX gets the bag offer from a guy like from a team like OpTic or Empire, I mean, or Subliners, then suddenly you've got to be really tempted by that. So that would be the biggest debates for me right now. And then the question marks are Hook and what does that look like? See, because for me, it's like, okay, maybe Envoy wanted to leave. Maybe it's a situation where Envoy was like, I have a good opportunity somewhere else. But what would that opportunity look like? Because in my head, Empire are either getting Envoy or they're getting CleanX or they're bringing Hook back. I think those are only the 3 options. I don't really see another option unless, well, Neptune though? Oh man. Wow. I mean, Neptune is very possible. I mean, look, think about how much last year Neptune, Illy, and Shotzi played like S&D together and like different games in the off season. And then you bring in Clay. That is very possible as a team of 4 right there to kind of mold a squad together. I could see that being the case for sure. Otherwise, it's Envoy, and Envoy sees himself teaming with Shotzi, and then you bring in Clay again, and then that's the squad. I could see that. Or it's Octane, and Octane bails on LA Thieves, and Octane heads over there, and now you have Envoy, Illy, and Shotzi and Octane as a squad. That seems very possible as well. I mean, I would still bet on Octane being the guy here. And then if you're Envoy, you're like, that's pretty dang tempting to go down here and be the 4th on LA Thieves with Octane and Kenny and Draza and bring in that squad there. But like, if you're any of these teams and you think that potentially Kleenex and Envoy is kind of like the S tier players that are on the market, and then you have like a Neptune and a Hook who are also potential SMGs on the market, and then you have Vivid there, all as SMGs. These 5 SMGs all seem like they're on the market right now, and so I'm keeping my eye on Twitter to make sure I'm not anything crazy doesn't go down. And then you have S tier leaders in Crim and Clay on the market. You have amateur players like Sib, and you have Awakening on the market, potentially from Florida. Like, these are all insane players that could potentially create God squads. And we've been talking for like, what, 15 minutes already, and we're still just theorizing about rosters. So at this point, like I said, I'm hoping to kind of create the news for you guys and help you guys make your own opinions down below. But I'm definitely excited to see. I'm not going to heart very many comments down below because I want to see the most upvoted comments and see where you guys are at with Rostermania right now. But this is the template right now. And if I had to give my best guess for what the news means, I'm going to go big or I'm going to go home. I'm going to go big or go home. All right, so I'm gonna go with Kleenex to OpTic with Crim. We're going big or we're going home. And so we're gonna have Kleenex, Dashy, and Crim come reuniting with OpTic. And then we're gonna have Clay and Envoy on Dallas. And then that would send, I don't know if you're Ultra, do you bring in another European player? And then here, ASIM's in a weird spot too, because I don't know exactly what New York thinks about ASIM. And then Vivid, oh man. Vivid and Hook to Florida? Maybe you just go Vivid, Hook, and Neptune flexes, and you just kind of roll with that as your squad, and then Yeez ends up getting the short end of the stick. No, we still got LAT though. Oh, I forgot about LAT. So then you send Vivid to LAT, you bring in Yeez, and you let Neptune flex. And then that ends up being a squad. That's very possible. But then Awakening's the short end of the stick here, but then you think Awakening's gonna get a team somewhere for sure. So now we have Awakening left out as an X factor here for Rostermania. So then either maybe he heads to New York, and then you have like a main AR situation, and you have Sib, Awakening, Hydra, and ASIM, but that seems pretty unlikely. I could see Accuracy back on New York. I think that's very possible. And then you still have Ultra trying to find a team here. So Ultra, you know, maybe they bring in like I don't know what they would do. A Pred? Like you bring in like Pred to come and be that 4th for you now? Or they try to go NA and you see if you can find another player there, or you bring an Envoy to replace Kleenex and then you have that type of roster. But that seems like a really tough spot to fill. So that's what gets crazy to me, man. I mean, I don't know if I have a really good prediction right now without figuring out what's going to happen with Awakening, because now you have a lot of pieces missing. I mean, if anything, I feel like this would be my best bet. And then Toronto brings in Pred. But I think we're going to have to wait for more news to kind of sift out before we give a great prediction about where these teams could go now that FormaL and Envoy are gone, because it all comes down to what Scump wants to do. So now let's say that Scump doesn't want to team with Crim, which is possible, very, very possible. Then I think Octane could be the guy there. And so then you do Octane, and then let's say Kleenex goes to Empire, which I think is at least possible at this point. And then you send Envoy to the Mutineers to team with Hook. So it's Envoy, Neptune, Hook, or you send Envoy to LA Thieves to team with Kenny, Draza, and like Vivid, and then you have, you know, Draza flexing, and that could be a nasty squad. But then now Crim is left out here, so then where's Crim gonna go? You know, so there's just like always like this extra guy right now. I've already been ranting for like 25 minutes, and we could go on and on and on. So I'm not gonna give a full-on prediction here. My best bet my best bet would be something along these lines, but it could all sift out in different ways. I'm hoping Toronto stays together because that makes it a lot easier to predict at that point. And then you could also see like a Vivid and Crim situation here on OpTic. And then you have Yeez here, and then that ends up being the team. And then LA is looking for a fourth still. And then that could be Envoy, and then Hook goes to Empire. And then now we have the Florida looking for a fourth again. So there's a lot of different ways that this could sift out. And then Standy and Kleenex are just massive X factors. So we've been going in circles now. So I think I'm gonna leave it at this point right here. I'm gonna move Asim down to the bench. Well, not the bench, but to the wild card players. I could also see a world where Asim goes to New York and is that guy for him as well. I mean, Hook is very possible as that player too. Standy's possible as that player. Kleenex is possible as that player. I mean, again, if Standy and Kleenex, if one of these guys end up leaving, then suddenly, literally, I mean, we're already at a point where anything could happen, but like at that point, it's pure chaos. So this is going to be the craziest Rostermania potentially of all time. Maybe the only other one would have been, you know, Rostermania heading into the Pro League or into the CDL, but it's going to be wild. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. At least informative, at least where we are currently with Rostermania. And man, shout out FormaL, a GOAT, and we wish him the best of luck, and he has a bright future in content as well, man. He's the GOAT, man. He really, really is. And so we wish him the best, man. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you guys really enjoyed it. But as always, guys, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and guys, we'll see you next time. I'm out.